who's my dad's sister, for their hospitality of sharing their beautiful space with us today. Dad loved coming here, and that's why we are so happy that you opened your front gate for us and allowed us to celebrate him today. Just some little bit of housekeeping that we want to do because we're all managers up here, sorry. I know everyone that knows us can appreciate that. Due to the current health rules, it's a purely outside event, so please stay in the fenced areas. We've provided porta potties and wash stations. Turn off your ringers on your phones while people are speaking, just out of courtesy. And should you feel the need to hug somebody, we suggest air hugs for the celebration of life.
Garry was born in Manitoba, but he was raised in Langenburg, Saskatchewan until the age of 13. Garry has 4 siblings, Linda, Lucy, Betty, and Pam. Garry was the eldest and the only boy. His first language was German. His family lived on a farm until he was 6 years old, at which time his parents moved their house into town. They literally picked up the log house his father had built, moved it into town with the help of family and friends. This log house is still standing in Langenburg today. When Garry was 13, his father moved the family to Surrey, where he completed his high school and continued on to graduate from UBC with a bachelor's degree and then a teaching certificate from Simon Fraser University. Garry married right after graduation and set off for Kamloops to begin his teaching career and start his family. He returned to the Lower Mainland 3 years later, where he continued to teach for the next 30 years. Garry enjoyed teaching. One of his highlights was teaching at Boulder Bay Forestry Camp for youth offenders.
Throughout his life, Garry had many hobbies, passions, interests, and maybe there will be some that you may not have been aware of. Garry's early years. His mom tied him in a rocking chair to the cupboard doors and hooked his little rocker rungs under the bottom of the cupboard door so he couldn't rock the chair while she went out to milk the cows. That way he couldn't escape. His mom left him behind on the picnic blanket one time all by himself when someone yelled snake. Ever since, he's had a fear of snakes. Laugh out loud. He disliked the prairie cold. His responsibility when still living on the farm was emptying the honey pot first thing in the morning and shoveling the coal into the stove in the basement to provide heat for the day. His father's job often took him away from the farm for long periods of time, therefore this job fell to him. He hitchhiked back and forth to high school. He was often late for school. Garry quit university, which was an interesting fact for me to find out. I didn't know that. For a period of time, his parents weren't aware of that. Basically, he was just goofing around. When he I hear laughter, that's great. When he refocused, he received a Bachelor of Arts degree from UBC in 1964 and was among the first students to be admitted to Simon Fraser University upon its opening in 1965. Garry lived on Cheese Whiz and bread during his university years. He also put ketchup on everything. Garry killed gophers and crows. He was paid 5 cents for every pair of crow feet and 25 cents for gopher tails. They were a pest that was detrimental to the farmers' fields and crops. This is true. You can actually fact check this one. Garry's years with his kids. Dad loved to take us camping and teaching us life skills at a young age. He would take us to Whidbey Island, Hornby Island, Golden Ears Park, and Manning Park, just to mention a few. While camping, he would teach us how to set up camp, set up a tent trailer. The lesson here was make sure it is secure. One time camping, we were in the tent trailer. We woke up in the morning. Curtis was gone. He had rolled out onto the ground and was under the tent trailer sleeping with a bear at the garbage can. Needless to say, it was double-checked that everything was tight. He taught us all to build campfires. First, look for some wood, whether it's broken branches, driftwood, or go to other campsites and borrow the good wood, but don't get caught. Dad charged us to watch TV when we were young. He would pay us an allowance to do chores, but charge us 15 cents per half hour to watch TV. One of us could buy a half hour and the other kids could stay and watch it too. So we thought that was a bargain. With Dad, he would do things different than what was expected. Most parents would bring home a kitty or a puppy. Dad brought home a pet skunk for us. And then we learned that Hollis had a pet skunk, so obviously they were made for each other. Very neat animal until it bit Dad in the thumb one day, so he thought, not safe for the kids, gotta get rid of it.
With Dad, he loved chocolate. He offered us chocolates and asked us to get what was inside. It crunched like Rice Krispies. Dad would say, no, guess again. And when we gave up, he would show us a container and it was chocolate-covered ants. Kenton and I decided one day to make chocolates for Dad, so we were outside in the driveway burning ants with magnifying glasses, prepping to make our version of chocolate-covered ants for him. Then there's the chocolate, milk, vegetable soup story. Dad took us out one weekend for a lunch, a hike, to spend some time with us. He brought vegetable soup for lunch and chocolate milk to drink. He forgot to bring water to make the soup. He forgot to bring propane for the stove and nothing to start a fire to heat up the soup. But us Fieseler kids knew how to start a fire, as Dad taught us. Not only did we have to find wood this time, but some embers. We did find embers. We brought back a log that was still burning and used it to get the fire started. When it was time to make the soup, Dad was like, chocolate milk is one of my favorites. May as well give it a try. Mix chocolate milk with the vegetable soup, and kids are hungry, they'll eat it. Oh, we did. It wasn't good.
Hobbies and passions. He had so many interests. Garry loved his lists. He logged every kilometer in his vehicles, recorded details of every trip. He inventoried everything imaginable. He left an unfinished to-do list, which his kids inherited. This is the locker that we're talking about in Abbotsford. He had a list for the storage locker that he used when he sold his home in Abbotsford, which was no lie, it was 200 plus boxes that was inventoried. This list was to help us navigate where items were, but in the move, boxes were stacked to prevent damage, so they were not in any order. It was like Christmas with every box. We would yell out, I have box number 45. What's in it, Hollis? She would say, give me a minute. And she would look and say, oh, that's Bob Ross. And indeed it was. It was super heavy, and it was full of Bob Ross videos, magazines, etc. It was nice having this list for sure.
Garry saved and collected such a variety of items. He collected stamps. Who knew? Beer steins, magazine subscriptions, a few different kinds of those. He even saved his first pay stubs. Fun fact, I did too, so I must have got that gene. Garry would have lists in his shirt pocket, lists for opening and closing Abbotsford home, Mazatlan apartment, and when he was pulling his fifth wheel. Garry even had a notebook listing locations of boxes in Hollis's crawl space. It's kind of funny, I guess I inherited all those kind of lists too, but I use apps now. Garry utilized his creative side in photography. He had his own darkroom. He taught photography at night school and at Thomas Haney, where he also taught video and film production within 3 studios. He loved it. He photographed weddings, nature, portraits, and sold his photographs at craft fairs for several years as a side job. We actually have some of those photos on the tables that you'll see later. He experimented with many different techniques that took hours to set up, but nowadays can be done instantly using editing apps on our smartphones. Garry was curious about most things and willing to try almost anything. He didn't know how to swim, but he still tried every water sport going. If he wanted to learn something, he would take lessons, buy books, rent whatever was available from the library.
Garry was into winemaking, including dandelion wine. He took up beekeeping for honey and beeswax, although he did say it would have been cheaper just to buy